book of Job is for a time when darkness appears to be winning, when the gifts of God seem to dry up, when the suffering is very intense. The book of Job is about resilience in the face of suffering. You have to keep going to God with your questions, with your cries, with your concerns, with your anger even. That's the place where we find replies that make all the difference. Not answers necessarily, but replies. And suddenly you can feel the love of God and feel His concern. He's with you in the suffering. The darkness is not empty. It's actually filled up with the presence of God. In 30 years of traveling among persecuted Christians, her story stands out as the most poignant and painful. She was the closest I have ever come to meeting face to face the character of Job. We called her Minhee. She had prayed for a child for years but could not conceive. But amazingly, after many hard times of prayer, she fell pregnant in her 38th year. But it was a bad time to be pregnant. This was the late 90s, and North Korea was in the grip of a terrible famine. For a while, her husband was able to find enough food. He would sneak on board trains and ask the cook if he could take away the garbage sack. Other times he just stole the food. Pregnant Minhee dared to think that they were going to be okay, but she was getting painfully thin. "God, I know you will provide for us," she cried. "Please help us and let the baby live, even if I have to die. Oh, just let the baby live." As she became thinner, her husband became more desperate in the search for food, until one day there was a knock on the door of the house, and her husband's body was carried in and dumped in front of her. He had been shot by soldiers as he ran from a train after refusing to give up a garbage sack. Minhee was alone, with no one to help. She tried to find food for herself, but she was too weak, and anyway, the countryside had been stripped bare of all nutrition. None of her neighbors dared to help, because she was now the disgraced wife of a criminal, and besides, they had nothing to share. When her time came, she walked up into the hills and lay down on the hard, hard earth. She pushed the baby out. The baby didn't move or cry. The child was dead. She kissed him on the forehead, named him after her husband, and used what was left of her strength to bury him in the ground. And then she stood up and said to herself, "I've had enough of this country and this life." And she simply walked out of North Korea, across a frozen river into China. It's a very hazardous crossing. The border guards will shoot on sight anyone trying to escape. She didn't mind. She didn't care. And somehow she missed them and they missed her. She stumbled into Christians in China that sheltered her and nursed her slowly back to health. And it was while she was still thin and weak that I met her. And she said, "I have only one question in my heart. Can I forgive God for making the world this way? Can I forgive God for making the world this way?" And that question is precisely the question Job poses to God. Her story can help us get into the heart of the book of Job, if we can receive her story in all its broken honesty.